Welcome to Tech Series Volume 1. This is the flame cutting episode. First we'll start with the headstock side, no air on a 50 by 5 millimeter tube. So first off, you heat it straight on in the center of the tube with a very small flame. You wait for it to turn a super dark pink, and once you see that it's started to be pink, you grab a hold of the tailstock and begin to pull. If the tailstock allows you to start pulling, then you're ready to go. It looks like I needed to add a little more heat to my flame because it wasn't quite ready. So once you start to see it pull with the tailstock, you drop your torch down below the tube so that it's just barely skimming the glass. You keep the torch in the very same place and pull with the tailstock until that glass spins out super thin. And then when you see that it's as thin as it can go, you pull a little bit faster and raise your torch up and it will burn in half. You want to make sure to burn off all of the excess glass that you've formed. Melt that away. If you don't, it can be dangerous. It can pop and leave mess all over your studio. Now I'm going to use a larger fire. I have a Red Max hand torch. And I will heat up my flame cut area to melt it back a little bit and thicken up the rim and return the tube to the size that I want it. Next we have the tailstock side, also with no air, on a 50 by 5 tube. And again we're going to heat in the center of the tube until you see a bright pink or dark pink rim. And then when you see that you're able to pull a little bit, you drop your torch down below, continue to pull. You want to follow the tailstock side of the tube that you want to keep with your torch. And as it gets down to the thin place, you raise your torch up a little bit and it pops right through that super thin glass. And then melt back your excess because you don't want that bubble trash all over your shop. Once that's all cleaned off, then you're going to grab your larger torch and round that back out. So here you can see I'm heating that up, put my graphite in, raise it up a little bit, and then you'll have a nice clean tube. Next we have the flame cut on the headstock side using air to blow into it on a 50 by 5 millimeter tube. So just like before, we're going to heat in the center of the tube and wait for it to get flexible. And if you give the tailstock a little tug, you'll be able to see when it's ready to go. Looks like I'm started there to pull it. I drop my flame down so it's just barely skimming the bottom of the tube. And as I start to pull the tailstock, you can see it thin out. And I'm keeping that flame just barely riding the glass, and then I puff into it and it pops a hole and burns right through it. And again, you want to melt off that excess glass so you don't have bubble trash all over the shop. Here I'm going to grab my bigger torch, melt that all back. And then I'll come back to the side I want to keep. I'm going to push that back in a little bit, making sure that the end is nice and round. And then I flare it up a little bit. I'm using the inside of that tube wall as a guide for my graphite, so I don't actually make a flare. I just want to bring that tube wall back to its original size and shape. You can see how nice and clean that is. Next up is a headstock side flame cut on a 26 by 3.2 tube with no air. So a smaller tube goes real fast. We're You see me heat it in the center. As it turns super bright pink, I'm going to drop that flame down below, give the tailstock a little bit pull. It's going to start to separate real fast. So it pulls out, gets super thin. I'm just barely skimming the glass here. See, it gets super thin, and then I bring my torch up and it pops through. This is a headstock side with air on a 26 by 3.2 tube. So I start heating it in the center, wait for it to glow pink. When I see the pink glow, I'm going to drop my torch down below and just barely skim it, give it a little tug with the tailstock. You'll see it start to separate. I'm puffing into it at this point, and when it gets super thin, I give a little extra puff and it pops right through. And then I just round it out using the reamer. So I give it a little flare on the inside. Give it a little flattening on the outside. One more little flare on the inside. And it's good to go. This is a tailstock side with air on a 26 by 3.2 tube. I've slowed this clip down a little bit so you can get a better look at what's happening. So at this point, I'm heating in the center of the tube, waiting for it to glow a light pink. I drop my torch down below as I can pull with the tailstock. I'm giving it a little bit of air. I'm chasing the tailstock side to maintain where the cut is happening on the side that I want it to. Pop it through, and it's done. Thank you for watching, everyone. I want to give a great shout out to Doghouse Glass for joining as a master level patron.